What's up, everyone? It's Sheletta. I'm here getting a phone for one of my newly minted teenagers with Xfinity Mobile. They've got great options, affordable plans, and solid coverage that works for our whole family. With Xfinity Mobile, my daughter can stay connected with me wherever she goes. And did you know when you sign up, you can get an extra phone line free for a full year? Switch to Xfinity Mobile today for more savings, more smiles, and more ways to stay connected.
Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. Designed for more than just therapists, if you're a helping professional in any way, Diversity in Clinical Practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve. And it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. If you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. Today, it's been viewed over 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself, and if you're encouraged by it as well, share with a friend. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author and speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today I want to share with you an encouraging perspective on the need for mental health awareness. If you weren't already aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, a great time to both remember and learn. It's a great time to remember what you already know, that maintaining good mental health is just as important as maintaining good physical health. That mental health struggles don't make you a bad or weak person any more than physical health struggles make you a bad or weak person. And that mental health struggles can manifest themselves in a variety of ways, both visible to the outside world externally, as well as invisible, only seen internally. Now, at some point, I would love to provide a good overview of a healthy perspective on mental health as a whole. However, today I feel compelled to do something a little bit different and offer a different contribution to this Diversity Do podcast on Mental Health Awareness Month. You see, there was yet another recent incident in Rochester, Minnesota, most known for being the home of the renowned Mayo Clinic, and most recently having made the news for a different incident that happened in a local park where a white woman yelled a racist slur at a 5-year-old child of Somali heritage who also happened to have autism spectrum disorder. And the child was found by the woman, as she said, to be, quote, digging through her belongings and, quote, having taken her son's stuff. The reason we would know about this encounter at all is because another adult witnessed the encounter and recorded the aftermath. When confronted about her shockingly yelling the N-word at this 5-year-old child in a public park, this woman justified her behavior by saying, well, if that's what he's going to act like, then that's what I'm going to call him. And so after the ups and downs of responses by this incident by law enforcement professionals investigating whether or not this qualifies as a hate crime, or after the ups and downs of the internet's response to whether or not this woman should be praised or canceled, I find myself asking the question, what's next? After the legal and social media dust settles, and after this child hopefully begins receiving mental health support to process this potentially traumatic incident in order to reduce the long-term impact of being addressed in the most worst possible way, what's next for this woman in the park and any others like her? For my worry would be that nothing happens, nothing new happens, no change or growth occurs, and she is not only another park visit away from another traumatic incident, whether it happens to be recorded or not, but also that she might become an inspiration to others who feel compelled to yell similar things with similar justification, and the trauma will continue or multiply. So, in hopes of adding one small drop in the bucket of reducing the likelihood of the next incident, I'd like to utilize this inspiration of Mental Health Awareness Month to offer a few words of consideration for this woman in the park and any others who feel similar. Consideration number one, it's okay to want to protect your child from potential threats. I start with this one because it's always great to begin by clarifying that this is not an attack. This is a genuine effort to clear up potential misunderstandings and hopefully find a mutually beneficial course of action moving forward. In order to do that, it's worth empathizing with the parent's genuine desire to protect their child. I have this desire, as do most parents out there. This can indeed be a dangerous world sometimes. So we keep our eye out for potential threats to their safety, as in people who get too close and might have the potential to grab up our child, snatch them up, and run away with them, as well as potential threats to their well being and happiness, which also includes protecting their favorite toys or convenient supplies from being taken by adults or other children. Let me be clear, this instinct is completely legitimate, even admirable. And I hope that every parent has this trait and that their children grow up and learn to express appreciation for their parents' efforts to do so. With all this being said, however, how this protective parenting trait is executed is where sometimes things go very wrong, which leads to consideration number two. It's critical that you learn to evaluate the legitimacy of what you believe to be a real threat. You see, while I can understand and validate the need to protect your children from a legitimate threat, one question that arises from this incident is why was this situation perceived to be a significant threat? Now, I also must admit that if I was at a park playing with my child and I looked over at the bench and saw another child looking inside my child's backpack or the diaper bag holding my youngest child's necessities, my attention will heighten and I would make intentional efforts to stop that from happening. My hope would be that I would simply call out to get that child's attention, let them know, I see you, that stuff's not yours, and then tell them to stop. If they didn't, then I would look to get the attention of the child's parents and ask for their assistance in removing their child from my stuff. Worst case scenario, I would remove my stuff from the situation, making every effort not to physically or emotionally harm the other kid, removing the kid from my stuff or emotionally go overboard. Again, all of this is based on a foundation of a value for my child and our stuff, while also acknowledging that it's just stuff. Valuable, but not the same as putting your hands on my child or put that on somebody else or emotionally harm them. Definitely having a vested interest in removing you from my child, but that's a different scenario. You would have to come close to putting your hands on my child for me to want to do that, and that's not what the situation called for. Here, because the child's physical nature was not in danger, the interpretation of threat and the level of response would hopefully reflect such. But that's not what happened. In this case, this didn't seem to be about the child's safety, only partially about the child's stuff. But this woman's response was to put the focus on her belief regarding the real suspected motivating factor contributed to the situation. And for this woman, that motivation was the child's status as being, quote, an N-word. And this is where the conversation changes and she loses what would have been her only argument. If she was protecting her child and her possessions, then the focus could simply be on learning how to do that in a healthier way. But she made it about more than just that, where she used this incident as an opportunity to express frustration, not just about this incident with this child, but about those people and how they act. For as she said, if the kid's going to act like one, then that's what she's going to call them. That is less about protecting a child from a child and more about viewing those people as inherent threats just because of who they are. And while this alone is indicative of a much larger issue that needs to be addressed, where misinformation needs to be clarified and negative assumptions, beliefs, and perspectives need to be corrected in the hopes of improved interactions with everyone whom she and everyone else like this encounters moving forward, it's worth noting that the public nature of this particular growth need could have been avoided by the other significant factor in this incident, that being the potential influence of this young child's autism spectrum disorder. Which leads to consideration number three. Make intentional efforts to consider potential mental health misunderstandings before making potentially traumatic judgments towards others, especially children. You see, while it's possible that in the blink of an eye, this woman was witnessing a premeditated theft by a child intending to do her and her child harm, it's also possible that this child was curious about something they saw in a park and went to look further. Does this mean the child's mental health diagnosis makes touching other people's property a good thing? Not at all. However, it would hopefully impact how you respond to it. Think about it this way. In life in general, if someone steps on your foot on purpose, it's understandable for you to take offense, not just at the action, but the disrespectful intent to harm. However, if someone steps on your foot by accident, then while it's still undesirable to get stepped on, it's more considerate to be reasonable in responding to this by informing the other person of the impact of their unintentional actions and requesting, maybe even insisting that they change their behavior. Move your feet, walk somewhere else next time. This gives the other person the opportunity to change out of genuine consideration for your well-being, or instead, to choose not to change out of a lack of consideration for your well-being. But here's the kicker. If you assume negative intent and respond to perceived disrespect with disrespect, when there's no intention of harm, then responding disrespectfully to a misperceived threat turns the focus back on you. And while incidents and accidents happen all the time, differences in mental health expression also contribute to misunderstandings on a regular basis. I'm not asking you to automatically know the best case scenarios, read minds, or become a psychological expert. However, if your life isn't being threatened, then it also seems reasonable for you to consider as many possibilities as you can and actively explore the validity of each before you respond. If you cannot find evidence for your best case scenario, then feel free to conclude with what is necessary to protect yourself from what seems to be a legitimate threat. However, in situations like this, where you are informed of a child's differing mental health abilities, you are being given the information you need to scale back as soon as possible, and then can then say, my apologies, I thought something differently, but now that I know, I'll change my perspective and my response. Unfortunately, that wasn't the option chosen here. This woman doubled down on the justification, dismissed the effort to increase her mental health awareness, and reiterated her negative perception about those people as if no amount of new information would have mattered at all. And then there's reality that even if this child didn't have autism spectrum disorder, there would have been numerous other reasons to resist the urge to react in the way this woman did. For while she will most likely move on with her life personally, this child was introduced to the negativity in this world in a way that has the potential to have a much longer lasting impact that will require intentional effort and support to overcome. I sincerely hope this child gets that support. In the meantime, with all this in mind, my hope for you, this woman, if you happen to have had somebody send you this podcast, or anyone else listening who empathizes with her situation and supports her behavior, my hope for you would be that you would see the legitimacy of your parental need to support your loved ones. That's a great trait. Make intentional efforts to distinguish between legitimate threats to your well-being versus perceived threats influenced by cultural misunderstandings and misperceptions. And that you would see variations in mental health abilities and expressions as just one of the many aspects of cultural identity and expression, yours and everyone else's. And make the most of opportunities to increase your awareness of varying mental health manifestations every opportunity you get. This is not just a gift of understanding for others' benefit, reducing the trauma of unwarranted negative expressions directed at them, but it's also a gift of understanding for yourself, for your benefit. For the more you do this, the more unnecessary trouble you can avoid based on cultural misunderstandings, and the more you can remain confident in the legitimacy of whatever feelings you choose to express, because you'll know that they're based on reality, ever increasing understanding, as well as consideration for others alongside of yourself. And with that, I'll say thanks again for tuning in to the Diversity Do podcast. If you have any pressing diversity-related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame-free and empowering guest speaker or training on this often sensitive topic, then feel free to reach out to me directly at www.diversitymadesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who can benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often difficult topic of diversity, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged as well. Or share with them my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. And don't forget to visit TED.com and check out my talk on what to do when you offend someone. I hope it inspires you, and it can be inspired by someone as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts so you can help improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this. You don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Sheletta makes you laugh, but did you know Sheletta Brundidge can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Sheletta Brundidge founded Sheletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast quality commercial content. And Sheletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Sheletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
When I was introduced to Bremer, I really appreciated it. It was more of a relationship. The support that we have in project-based lending, it's emboldening us to go after larger projects. That is a game changer for a small business. The resources and the support from Bremer Bank is exciting that I could stay with them forever. Sometimes when you're working with bankers, they relish the fact of saying no. With Bremer, it's like they're finding a way to say yes.